Alright, welcome back everyone. It is now October 30th of 2023. We are getting very close to November, which by the way is going to be the very month in which Lionsgate drops The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songs and Snakes, starring yet again Rachel Zegler, and this could very well be the third box office failure for her in a row. She already had to deal with West Side Story not performing well as Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and we all know that Snow White is not going to be well for Disney as it is. If this does not perform well for the later half of November, that would really tally all of her projects to becoming, of course, all failures, 4 of which in total by the end of 2025, because now Snow White has been delayed. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Rachel Zegler is that we know that she has said some pretty dumb things before in the past about Snow White and about what she said about where Andrew Burnap could quite possibly get cut from the movie, and how she called the prince a stalker with Snow White 1937. I mean, the list goes on and on with her comments. But one thing about her view of what Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songs and Snakes is actually going through right now is actually quite surprising. And we're going to be going over a lot of what's happening behind closed doors for the Hunger Games over at Lionsgate. Now, we already talked about how Lionsgate no longer wants anything to do with Rachel Zegler, as well as numerous other studios over in Hollywood after what happened with the Snow White backlash. But on top of this is where things begin to get very intriguing. So, with Rachel Zegler currently dealing with endless backlash for Disney's Snow White, one major development has to do with her reaction to the ongoing Hunger Games box office projections and the backlash from those that are opposed to Rachel Zegler, and for this movie, which debuts next month on November 17th. Director Francis Lawrence, who by the way worked on previous Hunger Games films, delivered the following. As a director and somebody who has worked on previous adaptations by Susan Collins, I thought it was important to stay connected with our actors and talents. One such as Rachel Zegler, who was an absolute gem to work with. One thing that we recently discussed was how there are endless trades claiming that we won't be successful with this film, something that Rachel reassured to me that these are mainly driven by those that are opposed to her other roles, such as Snow White and Anthea from Shazam. Rachel found the public's view about the potential failure of this film to be quite offensive, because she had worked so hard on this role, and she sings great too. I think she's the best singer I have worked with in my career. But Rachel was very frustrated over the public's view of how her other roles are being, of course, reflected on her upcoming film of ours, and I think it was my job as a director to also reassure her back that those are completely impossible to predict this early ahead of time. Now, guys, let me just stop here quick about what Francis is putting out there. So, they are admitting that they're aware of these projections about all of the box office, whereabouts, what's going to happen with the box office, essentially. It's not looking good right now for Hunger Games. In fact, it is really projected to be the lowest performing one out of all the films. And it's a mixture of the fact that Rachel Zegler is in it. That's where a lot of the backlash is coming in, because a lot of people are boycotting this movie that want nothing to do with Rachel Zegler. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that familiar faces are really not present in this film in comparison to the previous ones. So, of course, you have no Jennifer Lawrence. That could very well be another factor. But I think it's not necessarily the latter. I think a lot of it, yes, is to do with Rachel Zegler, because we know that Lionsgate, this is why they dropped her from many different movies that they were in the talks with her about. And this is exactly why. We have people like Francis, we have other creators of the Hunger Games prequel really kind of doing a lot of damage control for this film in and out. And that's where you begin to realize that Rachel Zegler is nothing more than box office poison. We already saw what she said in that behind-the-scenes commentary, and we also saw how Jennifer Lawrence was basically a consultant for Rachel Zegler. This is why, and he confirms this too, they became very, very close with each other. So he goes on to elaborate. I mean, I hope this film is successful, but Rachel was having a very difficult time dealing with critics across the board that are opposed to this movie, that are projecting a piece of art toward not performing as expected. She feels it's absolutely offensive that people go out of their way to not purchase a ticket just because they are opposed to her other roles that she's in. And I certainly agree with her that it's unprofessional behavior for certain sites and trades to project a film's failure way ahead of time just because of a specific actress that is in this film. I think people need to give Rachel a chance. Rachel feels as if she was shortchanged in her previous and current roles and deserves the recognition that she should receive for her hard work. And I agree, as a director, she's an actress with so much potential, and we seemingly unlocked that when we were filming this movie. Now, guys, one thing about director Francis Lawrence here is that you can see that he's very much like Mark Webb. Have you ever noticed that there's a lot of directors and writers that are defending Rachel Zegler as if she's like a helpless person? Well, sure, she can't really talk much because of the whole SAG-AFTRA nonsense, so that makes sense too. But at the same exact time, it can't be a coincidence that you have all these directors and writers specifically guarding Rachel Zegler and none of the other cast members out there. I don't see Mark Webb talking so much about Gal Gadot. I don't see Mark Webb talking so much about Andrew Burnap, but it's always about Rachel Zegler. And it's really beginning to become more and more apparent that they are either A, very much afraid of the truth that she is box office poison and they're trying to cover that up, or B, they really are just trying to oversell this movie, period, the end. And I think it could be very well both combined. Now, the thing about this too is that he goes on to conclude, both her and Jennifer Lawrence are great. I had the pleasure to work with both, and they are both good friends now after they got the chance to meet each other on multiple sets. Rachel just feels that she is not getting the recognition that she deserves with the Hunger Games right now, and we hope people change their mind once we get this out there on November 17th. Sure, it's a different film, and sure, it's placed in a different time, and we are expected to see different reactions. So, the thing about that is, yes, I think everyone knows who have read the books that this movie is set in a different time. Of course, it's not going to have, the familiar faces that you're all used to. So, this is why Jennifer Lawrence is close to Rachel Zegler, as it turns out. She was a consultant for Rachel Zegler. She was guiding her on set. She was kind of giving her, all these heads up situations behind the scenes, really kind of guiding her on how to carry the character, stuff like that. This is exactly why, by the way, we talked about this weeks ago, why Rachel Zegler, Jennifer Lawrence, Peter Dinklage, they're all going to eventually call out the Hollywood studios that have been giving Rachel and Peter a hard time ever since they called out Disney, and how they have had ongoing issues with the general public, etc., etc. So anyway, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.